All right, guys, this is Paul Singh, the market speculator at bullsonwallstreet.com. And I'm going to talk to you guys today about dealing with the gap down. It's one of the most stressful trading situations you can get yourself into when you're in a position and it gaps down against you at the open while you're holding it. We'll use GoPro, today's example here. And let's first talk a little bit about the GoPro entry. Now, we have an earnings catalyst here. There was this big volume day. The stock gapped up, and we didn't enter here. We actually entered here on a pullback the first time. This was a successful trade. It formed this kind of rounded pullback. We entered here right around the hammer. It came back up close to the initial high here, and we got out. And we've been stocking it, and now this was an IPO. Everybody knows about GoPro. They made great action cameras, and a 200-day moving average had developed here. The IPO had actually hit right up to round number 100 and has pulled back ever since, and now looks to be bottoming. Again, we had that earnings catalyst, and then a now what looked to be a remount of the 200-day moving average. And this is where we were looking to enter with the idea that the bottom is in, and now we can make a run up to initial target maybe of 70. And if you were to hold it longer term, maybe it gets up to the old high here and eventually even breaks out. But you know that's for a later time. Right now, we were more looking at this initial recent high right around 70, playing this 200-day moving average, and it seemed to be holding there. Volume pattern was still good. Nothing indicated that there was anything negative going on. So we entered right in here around 58.70. Now this morning, there was some news, ridiculous news actually, and this is why we don't pay attention to news and fundamentals when we're trading, and the stock gap down. From what I've seen, one Kramer said something last night, and then an analyst talked about some kind of survey that indicated that action cameras were not going to sell as well in the following year. It is all mumbo jumbo, has nothing to do with earnings, any real significant news. And that should come into your mind when you see the gap down. Now, we knew this was going to gap down pre-market. So that's when you start doing your research, you start looking into it. What is the news? Now, if it was something real, something earnings based, something really about what the stock is doing, then we might even just get out right on the gap down, because this is something real that's going to send the stock tumbling. But when I see it's Jim Cramer or some analyst making some comments, and we don't know anything about this analyst, and most of these analysts, they make their money through this manipulation game. They're not real traders. So that's what we're taking into account, that okay, this is that kind of mumbo jumbo kind of news. Maybe there's an overreaction, the kind of overreactions we get to Kramer or these type of analysts making a comment. And so we watch the gap down, and now it's gone through our stop. So we've got to have a mental stop rather than the hard stop. And if you're busy at work or you're on vacation or something, you've got to have the hard stop in and get out. But if you're watching, what we do is we watch where the stock gaps down to. Inevitably, this is what usually happens. It opens on a gap down, and then some of these guys who didn't know about it get caught off guard, and they start selling also. So you get a little bit more of a dip. And now what you want to see is when you get that second kind of dip there, is it continuing, or is it going to stop there and rebound? And if it stops and rebounds, the pivot is in. And that's what you're going to use as your low of the day. And if it goes below that, then you're going to get out. And the pivot was in here right around 55, looks like 55.15. And in my head, when it opened in the upper 55s, low 56s, I called 55, 54.90, somewhere in there as my low of the day, that if it went below that, I was going to have to pull out, even if I know the stock is going to eventually recover. There comes a point where you can't risk so much. And in my case, I don't want my loss to be over $1,000 on this, what is now $115,000 account, was around 100. That's getting in around 1%, and I don't want to lose more than 1% on a trade. So I had that in mind. And if we look now at the intraday, and I rarely look at the intraday, I just actually, Kunal and I just talked about it, and you're going to get a video in a little bit talking about how we factor in multiple time frames and all that. I generally don't look at the intraday, but this is another exception to that, where I will look at the intraday, down to the 1 minute in the morning, 1 or 2 minute, because we're looking at this very closely. But later on, I'll go out to the 5 minute. But anyway, this is what I talked about. It opened right around 56, and then it had that second surge, which you often get when people are getting caught off guard, and they're selling real quick. The pivot was in, and once the pivot was in, I think to myself, okay, now I've got that level where if it gets below that level, I'm going to get out. And here that level was 55.15, and I actually have my stop still in place around 54.80, 54.90, somewhere in there. So I like to give myself a little bit of room. But as you can see here, that initial pivot was in. We got the recovery. Gonna get a little test, and didn't even test the bottom of it. And then it ramped up. Maybe now a lot of people who think like me are thinking here, you know what, Cramer, some analysts, this is BS. The stock is still a good stock. We still have that earnings catalyst. It had phenomenal earnings. Nothing's changed within the company. Why are we selling here? And that's kind of looks like what's happening here. The stock has recovered, from a low of the day of 55 up to 57, which is now actually above my initial stop. So I'm feeling really good now. And my entry was 58. I believe it was 58.70 or 58.80, somewhere in there. So looks like it might be back on track. Hopefully this hammer stays, and we even get a better close. And obviously, if it comes back down and gets down in the 54s, I'm going to have to get out. But at this point, it looks like the gap level we were looking at has held, and hopefully the stock recovers now and remounts that 50 to 200 day. And we will stay in this stock until we get some kind of signal telling us otherwise. And I'll keep you guys posted. Obviously, trade report members, you will get alerts. You've already had a morning alert and then an alert right after the open on how to deal with GoPro. I'm going to record the intraday video in a few more minutes, and we'll keep a close eye on it. And anybody else, I'll keep updated on GoPro. We're going to be watching this closely. I do think, regardless of what the pullback is here, I still think it's a fantastic stock. It's got the earnings catalyst. It's got a great volume pattern. Until anything tells us otherwise, we still like the stock. So that's the strategy of dealing with the gap down. And one of the biggest things is keep your cool. You can't let emotions get the best of you. You have to stay calm and just keep an eye on what's going on there. And again, we'll keep you updated on GoPro, and I'll talk to all you guys later.